And so just wanted to make that clear. So if you don't mind, Neil, jumping ahead, and we'll start and just review the agenda. Thank you. So the agenda today, we are going to discuss how teachers face different challenges in the digital classroom than they do in a traditional classroom. And you've all had that experience last spring, and then we've started the school year with it this year. And so this session will focus on quality online teaching practices, teacher expectations, and the digital tools that teachers can utilize to support student success. What I'd love to know right now is if you could chat in and just let us know if you're fully online at the moment, or if we have some individuals from districts or counties that are back in the classroom. So if you can just chat that in. And Neil, if you don't mind taking us to the next slide. So our presentation today, although we will be focusing on the national standards for quality online teaching, we're not going to be able to cover all of these standards. That would be a very long session and probably would take the entire 6 hours. And so we wanted to really emphasize the pieces that we thought that teachers, you're in the classroom teaching, and you're probably wondering, how am I going to be evaluated? What are my administrators looking at? What are the expectations for an online teacher? And so it does look from your responses that most of you are fully online. So the very first standard, Standard A, professional responsibilities, which we're not going to focus on, that is just keeping your licensure updated, attending professional development, those pieces that are required of you as a professional educator. We are going to instead focus on standards B and C, digital pedagogy and the community building, but each of these areas always overlaps. So you're also going to hear us talk quite a bit about learner engagement, digital citizenship, and diverse instruction. And so I'm going to jump on to the next slide here. And on this slide, we are going to start talking about Standard B, digital pedagogy. And so as an online teacher, you are expected to use digital pedagogical tools that support communication, productivity, collaboration, analysis, presentation, research, content delivery, and interactions. And honestly, Neil and I could spend the entire session just talking about this because it's so broad. Instead, we wanted to talk about the communication piece. How are you communicating with your students and your parents? At this point, you're recognizing that it's challenging. Some of your students are super engaged. They log in every day. They're submitting assignments. They're requiring not much of your attention, but there's always that group of students that, for whatever reason, you're reaching out to. So in our school, we're using Google Voice instead of teachers using their own personal phones and texts. And not all of our teachers want to be in the school every day using the school, computers and the school phones and things like that. So Google Voice can be free. If your school has the whole school on it, then they're paying for your licensure anyway. It's a fantastic tool that you can use to communicate with your families and students. We particularly like it at Beacon because we have found our students are much more responsive to text. Even parents are more responsive to text because oftentimes we're catching them at work and they can't pick up the phone and have a conversation, but they can respond to text. So it's something you should definitely check out. Remind 101 is another tool that's we don't use it at our school, but it's a fantastic tool to just remind students what's due every day, what time their online sessions are, and things like that. Email, announcements, very, very important when you're communicating with families, students, that you do use announcements. You can create a new announcement every day. You can have it ready to go every Monday. But what I often found very helpful with the announcements was also that piece when I noticed students struggling with, let's say, lesson 6, and they're having trouble with the assignment. I could put in some tips on how better to navigate to the assignment, or maybe I've rewritten the question or something. So just redirecting them and their attention to that. Always using calendar invites or teaching your students how to use Google Calendar. I noticed a lot of you are using Google. And then live sessions. We're gonna come back to that one, but live sessions is a fantastic way to communicate with your students, but also your parents. Invite them to join you. Hold meetings online with your parents. Very, very great, because you can interact, you can screen share, you can show them their students' work, where you're having concerns, the discussion boards, student orientation, the navigation tips, open house. All of these are fantastic pieces to really get your students started in the right way. And for the orientation with the course navigation tips, I just want to point out that you are going to continue to have students enrolling every day. So putting something in your class, an orientation lesson, a quick video tutorial, or scheduling a one-on-one with those new students as they're enrolling is extremely important, because they're behind in curriculum, but they're also behind, several weeks behind their peers in how to effectively use your class and navigate to the various points. So I'm going to turn it over to Neil at this point.
Okay, these are the things that I'm going to talk about, but I'm going to go ahead and jump on to a demo course in Canvas to show this. Basically, part of what we're going through in this session is as Tammy pointed out, there's several different agnostic tools, meaning they can be utilized with multiple platforms, and depending on either site or district purchases, like Google Voice, for example, CCSD has not purchased that as a part of their Google overarching thing, and I don't believe it's covered under our regulation 4100 for our district, and so Google Voice isn't used as much. And if it is, it's set up with a teacher's personal Google account, which is probably not something that's covered by your school. But a lot of those other ones are used extensively, like Remind 101 that you mentioned. So there's a lot of variation, and I saw several of you using Canvas, several are using other things like Google Classroom and some different things. And so we're going to touch on, when Tammy talks about some different things to be thoughtful about in digital learning, I'm going to then provide some potential Canvas tools that address those. But any system that you're utilizing will have some similar functionality. And so within Canvas, these are the different items that I'm going to talk about for this, and there'll be a lot of overlap as well. So let me jump out of the PowerPoint and instead show you a Canvas course. And so this is just a demo course I put together with a fake student to protect the innocent and myself as a teacher, and just brought in a paid template that I had. And so the couple of things I wanted to show at this point is on the global navigation in Canvas. If you're familiar, there's a Canvas course navigation, and then there's a navigation that's available everywhere in Canvas. The inbox is available everywhere. And so that would be basically like a Canvas internal email system. If you go into it and you start a new message, it's pretty straightforward. You pick what course you're in, whether you're a student wanting to message your teacher or a teacher wanting to message some or all of your students. And so I have too many courses, so this is going to be difficult. But if I pick a course, then I can click on basically that course's phone book, for lack of a better term. I see there's only one person in this one, so that's not going to be very helpful. And it's me. So if this was a student trying to message their teacher, they would then click on this, give it a subject and a body of text, and click send. And so when the teacher responds, there'll be a badge with a number on it next to the inbox in your global navigation. And so that's utilizing that. And then discussion options. So discussion is another good communication tool. And so if you have a discussion you've created with a prompt for your student, what I wanted to point out is when you're setting up a discussion, some of the different options that are available. And so within creating that, you can make it graded or ungraded. So if it's just a discussion to get a sense of things from your students, it doesn't have to be always a graded thing, but it can be a graded discussion, and you give some expectations of, you're going to post one thoughtful post about the guided question and then reply to 2 other peers with substantive, and tell them either with a rubric or in a Google Meet what you mean by a good reply. Because my own children, they reply and they go, I agree. That is not a great reply. Okay, why did you agree? What points did you agree with that person? What questions might you have for that person? Stuff like that makes it to a substantive reply. Users must post before seeing replies is a great option, because then, the students are going to have to post without reading everybody else's post first and kind of waiting until they read a few people's and go, yeah, I like that person's post, I'm going to do something like that. They post, then they can see everybody else posts and make their replies. Allow liking, that's up to you. And then threaded replies means it's all kind of within the same threaded conversation, to where this post, people can reply to it and it keeps them together, which I think is a good option for that. Then, like most assignments in Canvas, it gives you some opportunities for due dates and points possible and things like that. And then the last thing on communication I was going to show before we move on, it also kind of harkens to something coming up on community building, which is adding something about yourself as a teacher. Whether that's a button on your homepage that goes to a page that you can put some cutesy picture of yourself on, or a picture of your Shih Tzu or whatever. Your name, a little about yourself, and contact info. This is going to be something that your students and your parents are going to be able to leverage throughout the term. So they may want to see it on day 1, and then they might not go to it again until day 15 when they have a question about something. And if they forget to go to the inbox as a student, if there's another alternative way of contacting you that's on here, both parents and students would be able to leverage that. So I'm going to turn this back over to Tammy and jump back onto the presentation. There we go.
So as a school administrator, looking at all of the things our teachers are doing, these three expectations really stood out. And so I would focus on the meets category, because that is what we're looking for. So when students and parents are emailing and calling teachers, the expectation is that they are responding within 24 hours, Monday through Friday. Now, absolutely, I have teachers who always do more. They're on at night, they're on early in the morning, they're checking on the weekends, but truly the expectation is to respond within 24 hours, Monday through Friday. The other piece that meets is that timely student introductions welcome email. So it's important that the teachers inspect the rosters for new students every day. They send a welcome email, and within that email, really some instructions on how to get started in the class. As an online teacher myself, when I was doing that, I usually followed that up with a phone call so that I could help get the students started and minimize as many barriers as possible. As you know, getting the students started and off on the right foot is most challenging online, and that is really where you want to spend a lot of time front loading the students so they can be successful. It also takes a lot of time off your hands at the back end. And then setting up a profile, letting your teachers, your students know a little bit about yourself. So again, the teacher profile somewhere, do you have a picture of yourself, a little bit about yourself to help the students realize that you really are a real person. Sometimes when we're teaching virtually, our students forget that human element. We sometimes do too as educators. So making sure that you update, you let them know who you are, maybe your hobbies and things like that. And so those are some things that I would look for. Moving on to the next slide. On this one, B2, the online teacher incorporates discipline-specific technologies, tools, resources to meet the individual learner needs. And B3, the online teacher uses different types of tools to interact in online courses in order to nurture learner relationships, encourage learner interactions, and monitor and motivate learner engagement. I'm in an alternative education high school, so our challenge is truly the last piece, motivating our students to stay engaged in school. And so when we focus on this, that is really our biggest piece. And so motivating the learners to stay engaged means doing all of these things. So we know that our students should be able to read and read proficiently, and they should be able to write, but some students it's very time consuming and painstaking. And when we've moved every single thing that they're doing online, that they're reading so much, finding tools like using text to speech or speech to text technology is super important so that your students aren't spending exorbitant amount of time online. Incorporating, it's also important that your class reflects the students in your class. So make sure you use images of showing diverse student populations, using culture or context. You've got to make it relevant to all of your students. So when possible, if you're teaching literature, offer different types of stories that maybe relate more to some of your students than others. The EL students, this is an unbelievably challenging environment for our EL students. So let them use and provide those translation tools as needed. If possible, line them up with some adults in your school who can speak the same language as the student and provide some tutoring in that language if they're really struggling, because they may not be able to rely on their parents. So we need to provide those tools via distance, just like we would if they were in our classrooms at school. So getting to know your students and your families, knowing their needs, extremely important in this environment. Providing very, very detailed instructions as you are probably learning. What you hand out in the classroom typically requires some prompting verbally. So now you've got to rewrite those instructions so that there's no verbal aspect to that, except for in your online session. And then what if the student misses it? So being very detailed, providing those communications, being very, very aware of who's in your class, and notice any changes in trends. So as I said, I'm at an alternative education high school. I have very, very high percentage of homeless students. And I gotta be honest, they're dropping out right now. And so we are doing a lot of well checks. Where are these kids? Where are they living? What resources do they need? Social workers are involved with this. So as a teacher, you are really the first person who may be identifying some changes in behavior. And so being really on top of that and then performing well checks on that, and then providing those students what they need. So if it's tutoring, if it's social work, if it's meeting with the counselor, really, really important that you identify those students and get them the help they need. And then on top of that, as you're grading, and I know your list is very, very long as an online teacher, and I do have some suggestions on how to keep track of all this, but as Neil mentioned, that quality feedback and for effective instruction is so important right now. So if you're seeing the discussion board and you're not liking the way students are responding to each other, do a good example. Be that model student. Come in and say, hey, great great post, this is what's going on. And then sometimes it takes, some additional prompting to the students who are responding to that great post, where they're saying, yeah, I agree, like Neil said. Well, what do you agree with? Ask 3 questions that the students are required to answer on your discussion post, and then keep those things in mind when you go to set up the next discussion, so that there really is a lot of instruction on that. And the way that I used to keep track of all my students is I had a side spreadsheet with my students' names on it and when I called last and what we talked about. And that helped me build relationships with them, so when I called the next time, I could say, hey, how is your sister doing? Or how did you do in that game? Or, did this work out? Just so I'd keep these spreadsheets for every class on all my communication. It would also help me identify when I last talked to them, because your students really do need that type of support. So I'm going to turn it over to Neil for the next slide.
Okay, and on this one, I'm not going to show the tools in Canvas. It would take an exorbitant amount of time to try to show all of these or how to add them. And every school as well as district is a little bit different in what they have purchased, because there's some free tools like CK12 for adding, creating assignments with content in them, being able to embed a Khan Academy video. That's something that's free for content. But when we're talking about some of the things Tammy was mentioning about, text to speech, there's a feature in Canvas called the immersive reader tool, which is a screenshot of what that button looks like here. That's from Microsoft, and it's something that you can just enable in Canvas. It's right now only on Pages, so it'll read content. What I'm hoping is that they make that available in quizzes as well as assignment directions areas, because that would be needed as well for your IEP students especially, and ELL students, as Tammy mentioned. The conference tool is a good one for fostering, community, which Tammy touched on. The conference tool within Canvas is not available for CCSD due to our size, would break that tool in half. The actual application is called Big Blue Button. It's possible if it was purchased instead of the free version that it would support larger numbers, but so instead, being able to add other applications like Google Meet to be able to set that up, easily within Canvas, or some other tools that you're able to add to Canvas to make things more interactive. H5P is an example of adding interactivity that you can end up leveraging. Nearpod was purchased for CCSD, kindergarten, or pre-K through 8th grade. And that one is really good at adding interactivity to a lesson, whether you're having the students go through it independently or having the teacher go through it in a synchronous session, which I think is the more powerful usage of that. And to Tammy's point about being the model student, you can also in that one anonymously showcase a particular student's example and be able to show, okay, this is what I'm talking about. See what this student did here. They answered this question in this way. They got into details and they referenced the text, and maybe they show a couple students anonymously and be able to highlight what a good answer is or a good attempt is. And so there's several, that's a very short list of some of the different things and apps that can be added within Canvas. And so whatever your district or school has purchased, you want to look to see if they have an integration with Canvas that you can set up. And not all of them do, and not all of them are equal. They're made by the companies that you purchased from, and so some of them, all it does is make it easy to add a link to a Canvas page. That is not very useful in my mind. And then others are highly integrated and end up being in assignments and passing back information. Google themselves has created, Google Assignments. They're still working on it. It's still kind of clunky at this point, but what it will turn into when they get it fixed up is going to be, a very powerful tool to be able to leverage within Canvas. And so, and that goes for, any learning management system that's a full learning management system has the ability to add apps to it. And so that ends up expanding the usage of of your tool. So I will turn it back over to Tammy.
Thanks, Neil. You have a question in the chat, and it says, are you suggesting adding Google Meets as an assignment so that it goes on the Canvas calendar?
Not as an assignment per se. I mean, you could add a link to it if you wanted to like mark attendance for that and be able to mark people that as present or not. I haven't seen, I've seen people make assignments for their synchronous sessions. I'm not sure if they've been adding the link to the Meet in the assignment itself. The Google Meet LTI tool in Canvas just makes it easier to create a Google Meet link, which is not that tough to do anyway. So that's one of those tools that I'm like, oh, okay, this was negligible on how, you know, what benefit it got us. So I'm happy to have set it up for CCSD, but it wasn't necessarily, there's not a lot of, it doesn't make things a ton easier for the teachers or students necessarily.
All right, thank you. So going on with Standard B, the digital pedagogy, the online teacher demonstrates basic troubleshooting skills and addresses basic technical issues as they arise. And then the online teacher supports safe digital learning spaces for all learners, data ownership and privacy expectations, digital identity, and curation. And really on this one, at this point, you, as teachers, I know it's difficult because your students are not necessarily troubles, you know, you might be using a Dell, somebody else is using a Mac, so you may not have all the features, but I see what you wrote. I think it's Jodine, and I agree. Teachers have been stepping up and they're masters of troubleshooting. You guys have had to find ways to help the students log in, navigate the courses. Sometimes it's submitting an assignment. I bet you're surprised at the number of students who may not even know how to name an assignment. So, and then mastering Google Drive as well. So if you're lagging in that or you're struggling with that, you really should find somebody in your school that you're comfortable working with and asking them for a little one-on-one time so you can help your students and also help yourself, because it will just take away some of the challenges and some of the stress that you have in helping students. So I'm gonna go on and what you're looking for to the next slide, and what you're looking for as an administrator in this. So again, putting that back on is we do wanna, you know, as an administrator, you do want your teachers to have the ability to troubleshoot basic LMS. But if they can't, do they know who can? And so really, if you can't do it, but at least you know, maybe it's your IT specialist in the school that you can connect the student with that. And then what I really appreciate when they do it is they do the connecting of the emails. So, you know, in our case, you know, it's, you know, here's, you know, meet John and can you help him with X, Y, and Z. So really being able to connect that student to get the help they need if you can't provide it, because sometimes it's a lot more challenging than reminding the student to, yeah, I mean, I can't even say how many times it was the student, you know, forgot to restart their computer or, you know, just some of the more simple things. And then the other thing we're looking at as administrators is timely course activity. So is the teacher logging into each course daily? Are they participating on the discussion boards? Are they providing announcements or suggestions? Maybe you're not doing an announcement, but you're sending emails. Is the teacher looking at the grade book and identifying why is everybody skipping, you know, the lesson 3 assignment? What's going on with that assignment? Are the instructions clear? Do the links work? Like, you're troubleshooting by you've got to use that data that you're seeing in the grade book. And again, identifying students who may need more assistance than you're providing, and looking at the performance, the assessments, and you're doing that, you know, 3 times per week. Again, these are the meets. And And then demonstrating knowledge of online resources. So identifying potential challenges and problems within the online content or LMS. If you've gotten the question, I can't access this file, then check the settings. It's probably not just isolated to one student. So, and then if you're getting the same question more than once, put it in an email or an announcement to help the rest of the class. It's just those simple tricks that you do when you realize a student's asking you a question. That's the brave one. That's the one who's confident enough to reach out. Think about all the students who aren't. So really taking every question from a global perspective and things like that. And I'm going to move to the next slide. And here we're going to start going into standard C, community building. And the online teacher employs learning-centered instructional strategies and current practices that leverage technology for learner collaboration. And then the online teacher creates expectations for appropriate interaction among learners, including establishing netiquette requirements, modeling implementation, and enforcing requirements. So if you have access to a dashboard, teachers should use it, and that just gives you an idea of the class activity. It's an overview of gradebook, attendance, records. If you don't have that, then what other digital tools can you use to monitor the progress and inform interventions? So by that, are your students getting it? Do you need to have a help session for a certain group of students with the assignment for lesson 3? What can you do to help the kids, when you're looking at that? We've looked at test questions. If everybody's missing question 9 on the test, take a look at that test question and see if it's on your end. If it doesn't align with the content in the lesson, maybe it needs reworded, maybe it needs retaught. So again, just looking at the data you have, because I know you miss being in the classroom. I know you miss looking at their faces. And when you could easily identify the students that were struggling, strategies to engage students. Sure, there's collaborative learning where you put the students in a breakout room. You're using discussions. Small group assignments. Have you been brave enough to try it out where you've put the kids in a breakout room and worked with them on those small groups assignments? And then as far as your responsibility, be present and be active in the course. Model appropriate interactions on the discussion and in the live sessions. Set expectations and just be consistent. Use your announcements, your emails. Netiquette is really challenging. I'm assuming more at the lower grade levels and in middle school. But it's teaching them the appropriate communication of chatting, instant messaging. Is it acceptable for them to email you without using please and thank yous? Is it acceptable that they're not writing in full sentences? Sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't. You need to set those boundaries and just be consistent. Neil, I'm going to turn it to you.
Okay, so on this one, I'm going to jump into Canvas again and to show some of the specific tools that to provide feedback and kind of speak to some of the things Tammy was talking about. So let me, jump into that. Oh, also we had put together some different resource links. I'm just going to go ahead and pop a link to this in the chat for everybody. Yeah, we'll do that again at the end just to make sure you get that. And at the bottom of that, the session survey for this session is at the bottom of that resource document as well. So back into our demo course, some of the different things that I listed on there was assignment comments. So if we go as the teacher to the gradebook and we go to a specific assignment in SpeedGrader, and SpeedGrader ends up, oh, and Tammy, could you change the access on that document?
Yes.
To where anyone with a link can view. So if you go into SpeedGrader for your assignment, there's a lot of different options. I'll be able to talk about most of them all in one screen. So assignment comments are just simple comments that you can put on the sidebar and that the student can end up seeing when they check on their grade. But the additional feature on there is you can leave, instead of just a text comment, you can leave a link to view more information, or you can leave a video comment or an audio comment, because sometimes, just like when we're texting someone or emailing someone, your affect doesn't come across, or the full explanation is more difficult. You know, when you get to that point where you're chatting, texting back and forth with someone, and finally one of you just calls, it's like, okay, this is going to be quicker if I just call you. The same can be said then for, and the humanizing effect that is able to add an audio comment on there. And it may be quicker for you to do anyway. The rubric, if you're one who views the usage of a rubric as a good thing, you can set up rubrics ahead of time for your assignments and then actually check a box to grade with rubric. And so then if you view the rubric and you've put it together, you can click on the boxes of the rubric and it will automatically grade it, to where if I check on those two boxes and click save, it's going to give Marco here, this my fake student, 7 points based on my rubric rating. And so it'll show the student that, that they're approaching and meeting in those two different criteria, or however many criteria you have, and they can check through there, as well as a comment on there. And so you have multiple options. Another option is annotating directly on what they submitted. If you're having them submit a file, you can annotate directly on there, whether it's highlighting part of it and then making a comment about what you highlighted. This needs to change. Not very specific, but I'm pressed for time. You can highlight an area and go this part needs work. Reformat. And you can leave several different comments on there, or you can just stick a pin of whatever color you like. I prefer orange, actually. And leave a comment, this is a run-on sentence, And so you can end up giving them feedback, and then you can just go to the next student, which I only have one student, but if I had more, I could go on to the next one or leave additional feedback. And so that covers, assignment comments, rubrics, annotation, audio, video comments. And another option for providing feedback, and this one is a way to provide it to multiple students at once, is you can go to any of the assignments, click on the little dots next to it in the gradebook, and message students who. There's a lot of options on here. You can jump straight to the speed grader from there, but a really powerful one is message students who. Going on to that, you have the ability to message anyone who has not submitted on an assignment, to nudge them, hey, this is due, or this was due yesterday, you haven't submitted. It sends it individually to all the students that end up popping up on that list that meet that criteria. And so you would see, let's see, message students who scored more than 5. So Marco Castro pops up on there because he scored 7. If instead it was message students that haven't submitted yet, Marco doesn't pop up on there because he did submit already. If 5 students popped up on there and I know I already talked to one of them, I can X out on that one individual student. It gives me a subject by default, and then I can put in my message and send it. And it's going to pop up in their inbox that I showed earlier. Hey, you haven't submitted this assignment yet. You need to get on it. This is late. Or if it's, haven't been graded, don't worry about it. I'm going to grade this weekend. Quit bugging me, Or if it's scored more than, you can end up giving positive feedback. So it's not always a message from the teacher that's like something you haven't done or something you need to improve, but hey, everyone I'm messaging right now, you did a great job on this quiz. I'm glad to see that you're able to get the content down. I think you'll be ready for the final, something to that effect. And so this option ends up being a powerful way to reach multiple students at once based on the same type of a criteria set that you have in mind. And so I am going to give this back to Tammy at this point. All right, Jodine, I'm glad you love that feature. Oh yeah, grading with a rubric on an iPad, dynamite. I mean, especially for discussions where you can read on there because, yeah, no, it's super slick. All right, so let me go to home on there and give this back to Tammy.
All right, thanks, Neil. So some other standards in the community building is just that the teacher develops a community among culturally diverse learners by providing opportunities for interaction that are conducive to active learning. The online teacher promotes learner-to-learner interaction in online groups in order to foster collaboration, promote higher order thinking skills such as analysis, synthesis, and/or evaluation. And the online teacher is able to meet the learning needs of all learners, regardless of cultural background and perspectives. And I can't emphasize enough how important it is as an online teacher to just keep those lines of communication open, not over, ever over, constant and consistent communication. So using your announcements as we've mentioned, reminders to keep your learners on track. We use a lot of goal setting. Goal setting is so important with students. What are you going to accomplish this week? What grade do you want to have by Friday? Helping the students make those goals because they've lost the consistency of your classroom. They've lost that they go to a building every day. So our important role as educators online is really to help them establish that consistency in the learning at home. Sharing, students love to share about themselves. So try to embed a few fun activities where they get to share about themselves. Not everybody is going to be comfortable posting pictures and images, but having that flexibility to present in different modalities, you know, whether they make an animation or whatever they want to do, but they really do they really do enjoy sharing about themselves and learning from each other. So many of the great practices that you do in your classroom, you're just going to do online in a slightly different way. And my husband's a teacher, and so I get to hear his side of things too, and I get to hear, you know, the people that he's working with, and Neil and I are part of an administrators group, and it was really exciting the last time we met how many are really embracing the online education and the opportunities it provides. So you know, everything you've done as a good teacher and the practices that make you good, just transition them to online. So Neil, do you have a few more tips to share?
Yeah, let me go ahead and jump to this. I'm going to just show this really briefly because I know we're getting close on time here, so I want to be cognizant of that. So for interactivity and community building and stuff like that, collaborations sets up that's a tool on board within Canvas that helps you create, and you can assign specific students to it to create a Google Doc that they automatically have edit access to, and it's housed, you know, and available within Canvas. And so that's a nice way of setting up some different collaborative documents for students to work on that aren't necessarily just tied to an assignment. There's group assignments, which would, you know, that kind of stands to reason. And then announcements. What I wanted to mention with announcements, and I'll just very quickly showcase this. Announcements in CCSD, we added kind of a hack that added a badge on the course navigation. So that's not available for everyone. I'm sure we could try to help people out and have my programmers share the code, but it is not you know, for the faint of heart as far as applying it. But one thing that can be done is having your announcements show up on your home page, which is helpful. So if you go into your course settings to more options, there's an option on there on showing recent announcements on the home page. And you may only want the one announcement showing at a time because you think it takes up too much space. Update the details. And then if I go to the home page, now that most recent announcement is showing at the top. It's got a blue dot on it because I haven't read it yet. And so that, especially if you don't have this badge showing up, that'll help a student recognize that there's a new announcement that they haven't read yet, which I think is sometimes tough. If you announce about every little thing, that's going to come across as nagging, and they're going to tend to ignore it. Or if there's not really pertinent information in it, they'll tend to ignore it, adults, students alike. But if they do go, oh, well, the session time changed for our synchronous session, and my student, my child missed it. He was a half hour late because he did not read the announcement. So if you get them in those habits of reading those and pointing it out, this is just one more way of putting it in front of them. So wanted to showcase that. All right. So do we have time to talk about the last one here really quick?
Sure. Thanks, Neil. So the last slide is on the teacher evaluation rubric again that we use with our teachers within our school. And we're looking for in the meets that there are established classroom management routines to manage student behaviors. We're looking for, is it consistent? Using effective feedback techniques to enhance student learning. As I've mentioned, my very favorite thing about online teaching is the detailed feedback that you can provide, whether you're using the rubrics and you're taking the time to message your students. But the beautiful thing is you can compliment just as easy as you can provide constructive feedback. And so using that to really let students who are doing a great job know they're doing a great job is powerful too. And especially notifying the parents about those great behaviors, because they will pick up the phone if they think they're going to hear something good. So using communication and feedback to highlight what's good, constructive feedback to help them understand and hit those standards. You've still got to hit the standards you're teaching. So feedback is a great way to do that. And then managing and presenting course virtual sessions, using these online sessions effectively, think about, can you do a breakout room? Can you put in some interactive tools, polls? Kids love to be engaged and they love games. So as much as you can gamify your lessons is fun too. So just keeping them engaged and letting them know that there are real people involved and interacting with their classmates. Those are all things, and you can see that there are ways to exceed standards and meet the standards. Now, I forgot to mention, we're sharing this tool with you. On the left, under the instructor expectation on the rubric, you will see IP, which is instructor practices and professional responsibilities, which do align to the NEPF. So I know we are out of time, and so I hope you were able to chat your questions. And Kim put in the chat that there is a survey for you to complete. And we really, really appreciate your attendance and wish you the best of luck as you go forth and this year in online and digital learning. It's fun.
And yeah, make sure to check out nvdigitallearning.org, where the state continues to put on different resources that are available as they get created, because they have a whole cadre of teachers and admin that are making resources available.
Nice job, guys. Big round of applause. I don't know if y'all saw, but Superintendent Joan Ebert joined us, as well as Associate Sup or Deputy Sup Felicia Gonzalez. So it was really nice to have some of the NDE folks join us today, guys. Our next session is the chat session. This is a kind of a cool, unique way to be able to meet some of our digital engineers. So take some time, find a good chat that you'd like to get involved in, because it is a chat. So we really want to hear participants' thoughts and ideas.